Welcome to your last video for this unit. This section is going to focus on how British actions inspired the American Revolution. So starting off with the French and Indian War. Now, this was a war that was fought between 1754 and 1763. So we are before the signing of the Declaration of Independence, before separating from Great Britain. So during this war, the colonists were fighting alongside the British soldiers against the French and the Indians, okay? So Native Americans and the French were fighting for control over land in Pennsylvania and Ohio, and they're fighting against the colonists and the British. So it's kind of weird to think about the colonists and the British fighting on the same side, but that's what they did in this war. So eventually, with the help of the British, the colonists were able to be victorious in this war. But we know that war costs a lot of money, and the French and Indian War left Great Britain really, really financially burdened, shall we say. So what's the best way to increase revenue, increase money in your treasury if you're a government? That is to tax your people. So the British Parliament, with the support of the king, passed a series of acts designed to generate more revenue for Great Britain. The first of those was the Sugar Act. And the Sugar Act was passed in 1764. And this one specifically taxed things dealing with, well, sugar. So rum, molasses, sugar, that kind of stuff. The next act was in 1765, and it was the Stamp Act. Now, the Stamp Act was going to place a tax on any paper products, so like newspapers or legal documents, marriage certificates, that kind of stuff. The Stamp Act was actually so unpopular in the colonies, and the colonists responded so badly to it with riots and lots of pushback that Parliament actually didn't even enforce the Stamp Act. They rescinded it, or they took it back before it was even put into effect. The most popular of the acts, of course, was the Tea Act, but the Tea Act was designed to make British tea cheaper. So people who were heavily invested in British tea were able to make a profit from it. So we're going to go into a lot more detail about that one in class, into our discussions. Next, we know about the Boston Tea Party. The Tea Act led to the colonists being really, really, really angry. So what did they do? They dressed up as Mohawk Indians and threw the tea into Boston Harbor. So if you're Great Britain and the colonies have just destroyed lots of your tea, what are you going to do? You are going to be mad. So you're going to pass a series of acts or a series of laws designed to try to rein them back in. And that series of acts in the colonies was known as the Intolerable Acts. Now, this same group of acts in Great Britain was known as the Coercive Acts. And I want you to think about why those acts are named differently in different countries. So then, as early as 1773, actually as early as 1754, the question of whether or not the colony should be independent was actually brought up. This guy named Benjamin Franklin, you might know him, he was responsible for kind of suggesting and promoting this idea of independence at the Albany Congress. So they met in New York. There was a group of people who came together, and they were like, I don't know, we might be okay with this whole independence thing. Eventually, though, eventually that idea was squashed because they didn't want to have a super powerful central government. So that leads us then to the First and Second Continental Congresses. The First Continental Congress convened as a result of the Intolerable Acts. And the big thing that they did was they passed an embargo to stop trade with Great Britain. This leads, of course, to the Battle of Lexington and Concord on April 19, 1775, which is sometimes known as the shot heard round the world. Eventually, after that, the members of many colonies come together to meet at the Second Continental Congress. And the big thing that they do there is they kind of take on the role of a central government. They also elect a president, that is John Hancock. And then shortly after that, in June of 1776, we have the path towards independence. Richard Henry Lee drafts a resolution in June of 1776 that says the colonies should be independent. On July 2nd, they actually vote for independence. And July 4th, they actually sign this lovely document called the Declaration of Independence. And I will stop there. If you guys have any questions, let me know.